have an audience of ModPo people around the world and others who are watching through the live stream. So do we have that sound up now to them, Zach? Yes, good. I'm getting a yes. Great. And of course, it means we're going to make a recording of the reading, which we're very excited about. And that means that it will get added to Kate's Pen Sound page. And I assume that I've been saying this all day, but I assume there are going to be some new poems that new to the Pen Sound page added. So we're excited about that. Okay, so welcome. We're going to have a reception after. So we're talking about probably around 7 or so, where we'll get to do that and hang out. So thanks for staying for that. And thank you to Kate. We should start by thanking Kate for making the trip from Providence to be with us. So we have 2 books, the 2 new-ish books, The Arrangements, Book of Poems, 4-way books, and Dream of the Trenches. And a new long essay about pigment and not writing about Charles Olson. Did I get that right? You've written an essay about pigment on the one hand and not writing about Charles Olson on the other. And you wrote it when you were a Harvard Woodberry Fellow last year, which was, and can't wait to see it. It's going to be coming out in the Chicago Review. So Kate, as you know, lives in Providence, teaches in the spring times at Brown, and is a friend of the Writers' House and of Philly people, and particularly in the last few years of ModPo. And actually, Kate is in the ModPo syllabus that is, her poems are in week 2. She was here today to do a ModPo webcast, which was great fun, and was not embarrassed at all, but on the contrary, delighted when Anna and some others talked about her work as in the line of Emily Dickinson, Lorraine Niedecker, Ray Armentrout. You were okay with that, more than okay with it. So I have a feeling, and so this book, The Arrangements, is totally fantastic. And this morning, the group improvisationally did a close reading of one of the poems, and it was very gratifying and very exciting. And these poems are well worth rereading. So you'll hear them, you'll buy the book, you'll be willing to inscribe copies of the book, which we're selling. So we're selling both of these books out in the back in the living room. So get a copy. So Kate, thank you again for coming. Looking forward to this. Kate Colby, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Al, for having me back. I love being in this very special place, and just the warmth of the community you have here. It's palpable. And I've been in some other communities that are not that way. Anyway, these 2 books came out this year, and perhaps because I have spent so much time with the arrangements in Al's world, I'm going to read quite a bit from Dream of the Trenches tonight. And it's made up of sequential essay bits, and they accumulate. And I've never read them non-consecutively, but this time I tried to sort of find a representative cross-section of pieces of it. So I'm going to read that a bit, and I'll also read from the arrangements, and I'll read some new poems as well. Thank you all so much for being here. I should say, well, this is evident, but it takes place. Is that mine or yours? Oh. Sorry. My kids made it home from school. That's good. Yes. It has a auto-fictional quality, whereby it takes place along a drive to a funeral on Cape Cod from Providence, where I live. Driving to Margaret's mother's memorial service. In the car, alone, a broken radio. I-195 tracks the jagged coastline to the Cape. If I could tug every harbor and inlet taut, what would that do to distance? And if I included the space in rocks, pits, and the clefts between grains of sand at the water's edge, how long would the coastline be then? I'm not sure what it is I'm wondering exactly without the cartographic terms to apply to it. It's something about the shortest distance between 2 points and the longest that's a stop on the organ of my consciousness. Is this the difference of, not between, length and distance? What I think is a system of units. The acuteness and chronicity of my need and dependable inability to make sufficient distinctions keeps me afloat and adrift. The endless involution of everything and each thing keeps my eye to the pits of the grindstone, while the capacity of 2 times the size of my metonymic heart walks around outside my chest. I can't tell the sequestering effects of fatigue from those of motherhood. The line between them and between all barely and indistinguishable things is where everything meets, stops, and makes further depth impossible. The vanishing line of my ability to say everything or anything at all. If I could see the future, would I have had 2 children, meted myself into piles of cubes of finger foods, time outs and time in solitary with myself on both sides of a 2-way mirror? I'm sure I wouldn't not have done it, which is different from saying I'm glad I did it, which isn't not true, but glad reminds me of garbage and the zip-top baggies in which I packed Cheerios for the pool. I can't see the future, but find it just as hard to pin down the conditions of the present. Is it more accurate to say that I pretty much hate the whole business, but that it's full of lovely moments? Or that the whole package is lovely, but made up of dreadful little eternities that gather in the cushions and crunch to dust underfoot? A perfect container makes sense of its contents. If I could swaddle the kids in snug muslin words, I'd tuck them into my elbows and return us to agreed-upon time's perennial false spring. Along the highway, green walls of creeper draw in like a hall of the backs of mirrors. Driving to Margaret's mother's memorial service. From the bridge spanning the longest finger of Narragansett Bay, inert brick smokestacks bristle on the skyline's back. Welcome to Spindle City. A few years ago, I applied for a grant to write a book of poetry interweaving the histories of Easter Island and Fall River, Massachusetts. It was going to investigate how economically insular places, successive populations, lay claims to the land, displace one another, exhaust resources, and build monuments to be interpreted by future generations. Fall River's hollow textile mills are now upstaged by a pair of monolithic cooling towers built 2 years ago because hot runoff from the electrical plant was killing the fish. Once, when my son was 2, and we were trying to sidetrack him from a tantrum, I asked, "Hey, what's that coming out of those towers, Willie?" He said, "Hot dogs." When we drive by now, we see all kinds of things coming from the towers. Pizza, sneakers, donkeys, music. Language is insufficient to describe the world because it seems what is made of sutures. The correct answer was steam. I didn't get the grant to buy time from the children, to close and defend my borders, the thought of which brings a warm lump of panic to my throat that is only eased by my option of turning into the guardrail. Driving to Margaret's mother's memorial service. Sloppy raindrops begin to fall as though tossed from the sky's windows. In the uncertain edge of a summer downpour, you can practically see the gravity. Steam rises. I hadn't driven a car for more than a decade when I moved from a large city to a small one and had to concede to this cooperative form of agency in getting around. It's now one of my only available sources of relative freedom. Driving in the rain doesn't so much make me nervous as it requires that I be what I'm doing with this capsule in a bumping sea of others, rather than the meniscus of and around myself I've come to love the act of driving for. Lizzie Borden lived in Fall River. I haven't yet fit this fact into my slurry of assimilated interests, but I love questions whose answers are lost to history, of which the uncertainty of Borden's guilt is one. Are there mysteries to which there are no answers and never were? If I could land on one of those, I'd be golden, the receding light in my rearview mirror. Darcy and Kate, who are the first to read everything I write, say I have no business throwing around conundrums of theoretical physics. Still, I do it all the time. I absolutely don't understand them, but their abstract mysteries are useful for things I'm trying to unfigure. For instance, I read that the fact of darkness means the universe must be contained, or everything is unique. Everything is unique. See? Nothing is what it seems. The smell of rain on hot pavement connects this moment to so many others, none of which I can remember. Is every moment more a sequel of or serial with the one before? A conundrum's a semantic impasse, not an actual condition of the world. Driving to Margaret's mother's memorial service. The word consumed can be active or passive to the extreme, meaning utterly actualized with attention or all used up, usefulness canceled by use. To die of usefulness makes you a martyr, unless you die in the natural service of motherhood, say running into a house that's consumed by flames to save your own children. You consume a sandwich or take part in an economic plexus that is much bigger than you and your perceived choices, making this kind of consumption a global capitalist misnomer that encompasses the market's fundamental mode of misrepresenting agency. Everyone's to blame and beholden. You can also die, Ouroboros style, of a kind of consumption inflicted by your body itself. I spend so much time trying to determine when I am more or less present and whether self-actualization has more to do with the body or head or the threads between them. When I'm utterly caught up with the kids, sweating and frustrated and consumed with the putting on of shoes, am I present or absent? Am I more myself when I am being or thinking about myself? Is one chronic and the other acute? How many points make up a line? Great questions of our time. What consumes me? This, my children, my own tale. Oops, the strangest of loops. My sleepless nights in the visor mirror give me a little duende under the eyes. When I do manage to think, I sometimes get sidetracked trying to determine if my thoughts sound like me. Whether I think in the sound of my voice, I mean. And when you start thinking about your own thoughts, your head collapses like a disturbed souffle. It's then you need to look away, out where you're driving. The car ahead says, "Wash me," in the same grit, stardust, and exhaust of which it is written. Driving to Margaret's mother's memorial service. I found someone's to-do list on the sidewalk this morning while walking the dog. Although I'll never know her, it exposed its owner like the inside of her eyelid. Taped to the bathroom mirror. Things to stop using in my poems. Mirrors, halls of mirrors, 2 or 3-way, etc., self-reflexivity, mise en abîme, combinatorics, recursion, involution, Ouroboros, recapitulation, ontogeny, phylogeny, etc., anything suggested by Hofstadter, modulating musical canons, millefeuille, matryoshka, loops, feedback, strange, etc., sets within sets of themselves. I already control F my manuscripts for the phrase "I don't know," but let most of them stay anyway. I just want you to know that I know. I only learned there was a word for my preoccupation long after it began. I was disappointed and a little ashamed until I started to read Drost as a portmanteau of droll and triste. Driving to Margaret's mother's memorial service. People like to say they devour or digest their art and information, but I try to go at it headlong, as through a star field, or I fold it into my face like an unassimilable stick of juicy fruit. Not long ago, I read Madame Bovary for the first time in maybe 10 years. Both this and the last time I read it, the image that stuck with me was of Emma's bedroom, the one she slowly and revoltingly expires in. Flaubert doesn't furnish much detail on the room, but I pictured it fully and specifically and completely differently each time. And my second vision of the bedroom didn't supplant the first. I can see them equally clearly, and except for a lot of rough, dark wood, the rooms and the beds in which Emma dies have little in common. What made my second vision of Emma's room so different, and why didn't it overwrite the first one? My perspectival relationship to Emma's death must have changed. It's like how even if I've labored over an email message and read it many times in draft, right after I send it, I often go to my sent messages folder and read the sent version as though it might give me a clue to its potential reception. Memory is its own antimatter. The only way to keep your memories intact is to not remember them, which is why I have a desperate sense of wanting to keep the babysitter safe. She's a container of perfect memories, mostly inconsequential to her, and to which I thankfully don't have access. Driving to Margaret's mother's memorial service. When you start habitually narrating yourself, it begins to feel as though a thing hasn't happened if you can't adequately describe it. But description and narration are bound by a temporal standard that communication necessitates. So you become dependent on description for experience, and then the description compromises the experience with its falsifying strictures. Sometimes I wonder if I actually preempt some of my experiences by narrating them as or even before they happen, replacing them with their own anticipatory representations. One meaning of reflect is remember. The other is having your image cast back. There's a note taped to my refrigerator door. This is just to say, suppose each memory is like DNA, making sense of the whole, if only you could decode it. Would we not then depend upon description? If I could, I'd tape this note to the button the door depresses to turn the light off when you close it. Driving to Margaret's mother's memorial service. Following World War II, samurai movies took off in Japan, depicting relatively useless warriors in a time of relative peace. Narratively, the films are all rising action, a ratcheting up of tension into a single climactic scene. In Masaki Kobayashi's Samurai Rebellion, drama builds around the fact of a stolen bride, eventually leading to a brief and thorough sword fight. The film is suffused with shadows, stiff folds of elaborate fabric, the non-rhythmic creaking and thumping of traditional instruments. A cornerstone of samurai ethos is seppuku, the ritual self-disembowelment a samurai performs to either save face or avoid enemy torture. Note the difference between perform and commit when it comes to suicide, which is more or less the opposite of that between a performance and a commitment. Seppuku is weak, what a man would do, but the only suicide in this film is that of the stolen bride who throws herself on a spear. Following the fight scene, there is one final clash wherein the hero is forced to take down his friend with his sword, while he is himself taken down by firing of unseen gunmen. All that martial skill and intricate code of honor comes to naught, dispatched by a faceless modernity. Today, we have mass shootings and large-scale acts of terror committed in the name of God or as a performance of extreme fecklessness. The two are easily confused. Never and forever are the same without a frame. Fine lines make mass graves. In the end, the hero dies and the dead bride's baby is taken to be raised by her wet nurse. Driving to Margaret's mother's memorial service. Is the purpose of art to mirror or mimic the experience of being alive? Evidence of absence. You can't see your own eyes move in the mirror. In the 15th century, painters discovered linear perspective, the more realistic rendering of objects as proportionately smaller with distance from the eye. With it, the visible world, rather than the ethereal and conjectural one, took center stage in European art. Now zoom out to the turn of the 1970s and the simultaneous rise of the seemingly opposed photorealist and conceptual art movements, both in which creation has left the premises and the empty house plays to itself. Whether the house is thereby rendered a vessel of containment or a vehicle of vehicularity, and or if in which respective case I can't say. But in any case, the material object is replaced by mirrors and language whose ultimate function might be the same. Correlative faux amis. I know that's at least half redundant, but my birth coincided with this twin apotheosis and antithesis of representation. I'm not at all sure of the difference. Once I read an ethics column about a woman's daughters concealing from her the fact of her impending death. To not know the answer to the question that haunts your whole life, even if you never think about it, leaves you forever incomplete. How and when will it end? What it all comes to, ahead. Driving to Margaret's mother's memorial service. After graduate school, I found a job as a copywriter at a gift catalog. I would be briefed on a product's features and then write a story to sell it. Something to imbue a set of grilling tools, say, with a seeming long history. I quickly learned that almost any consumerist frippery, lockets, cufflinks, heirloom baby gifts, can in some way be attributed to the Victorians, who were, after all, the inventors of pre-chewed sentiment. At the same time as each product had its own story to tell, it would allow the gift recipient to tell their story, creating a beautiful figure eight of narrative significance for a piece of laminate junk mass manufactured with cheap labor on the other side of the world. This storytelling imperative has become a cliche in advertising. From cars to bath products to the credit cards you buy them with, a wide range of consumer products now claims that it will help you to tell and or become a part of your unique story. Note, while unique used to mean the opposite of nondescript, it now most often means nondescript. So which is its true or actual meaning? One way that retail companies I've since written for promote this story business is with personalization, e.g. monograms and birthstones. Note, it was the Victorians who popularized birthstones and ascribed their months and meanings. If you search history of birthstones, birthstone chart, or birthstone origins on the internet, you will find countless versions of the same story and the same chart with the same supposed meanings, and I personally wrote a good number of them. Another good number of them were written from those that I wrote. And while I'm a stickler for accuracy, I wasn't paid to do academic research on the history of birthstones, so I took all my information from the internet. Thus, in the span of only about 20 years, we've created a new, rapidly modulating history of birthstones that's rooted only in the ether like an air plant. And nested inside these apocryphal origin stories is the arbitrary assignation of meanings to birthstones in the first place, as mise on a beam of the original ascriptions of meaning to the sounds and symbols of language itself. I participate in a laundering of language and history that's antithetical to my work as a poet, wherein I try to make plain the falsities of consensual reality and to demonstrate how historical narratives are written and run away with. The internet and the language of commerce tangled within it is a widening gyre of misinformation that kills words dead. Note, according to the internet, where the rumor first spread, it's apocryphal that Beat poet Lew Welch wrote Raid's famously redundant slogan. Recently, I've been writing faux blog posts for a company that sells a libido-boosting mechanical product for menopausal women. I write chatty lifestyle posts under a moniker that my friend calls Fake Kate. Fake Kate has a whole life that bears little resemblance to my own, although we share some favorite recipes and a husband who eats his cereal too loudly. At one point, I was asked to incorporate quizzes, and I wrote one that contained the question, which of the following is not a symptom of menopause? I didn't anticipate how hard it would be to find a non-menopause-related symptom. Hair loss, tooth decay, body odor, burning mouth, brittle nails, insomnia, dry skin, dizziness, flatulence. Taking into account innumerable blogs, message boards, chat rooms, medical sites, and women's magazine web features devoted to menopause, there is nary a bodily complaint that is not attributable to the cessation of menses. As the internet folds into itself like a marble cake, its role as a catch-all for individual experience, as corrective to the consensual collective, can be read as rendering all categories of experience meaningless. Language is made of internesting sets whereby we understand ourselves, but perhaps it can proliferate to a degree that undoes its fundamental role of facilitating communication, i.e., if the symptoms of menopause are just about anything, then menopause means nothing at all. Menopause is real, though, and actually only refers to one thing, the cessation of menses. Language is escaping us, where the verb is both active and passive, the words evading us and released like flatulence. So it's just a little bit of that. There is it's a sort of fictional piece that runs through it titled Dream of the Trenches. It's kind of a counter-narrative. All right, I'm going to read a little from the arrangements, which came out just about a year ago from Four-Way Books. And these are very short line poems, so I need to shake it off, adjust. Middleman. Only the body dies, but it takes the rest with it. Whether the rest is then dead or forever, inaccessible is immaterial. Day breaks into nets, entangles air between birch and fence, the trellis and the rose. We meet in the middle with words to render myself unnecessary and invincible. But sights are trained and vines espaliade, splayed, still shivering in the web. I'm not immortal yet. Exhibit A. You are always born in your birthplace, but it's rare to die on your grave. I take up space like a habit. Nothing matters, and branches, the color of their shadows on snow. In white noise, no silence. Death place is a word. A poem is there to understand its origin. The arrangements. A photo is mostly finished, but you can't consummate a painting in time. The eyes will follow till one of you is nearly exhausted or a head in a crested conquistador hat appears from behind the holes. It grins, you die. No, lie next to me while I grind through the night. I want you to hold my hand across a rough surface and read me this song, but you have to get the words wrong. Dregs of the season depend from the trees. Wet mats of leaves still being rained on. Loathe this cold, but hold it close. Let it get colder, as things you intend to tell but won't. Apparent absence is presence enough for the moment. I will say this much for silence: to break it is to know what holds us here to the bone. Broken down on the road from you, red mist of budding trees, a clump of dead sumac, I think, to say the least. Day doesn't so much progress as condense. Rain fills red solo bowls for feral cats in the yard. If life could be saved, I'd take the lump sum, meaning all at once, after the beep on my answering machine. Petals pour down the street to the bay. See what I'm saying? It looks like a mouth. Steam curls from hosed concrete, thick silence, studded finches, crosswalk stutter, cut here. Nothing's clear enough to see through. Invisible windows come between and seem the same. Beauty's useless, afternoon moon, a complete hole into which the eye grows its pupil. Are hours consumed, or do they accumulate? Time is a trash bag, forever collecting itself. My cup, quenched teeth, clenched fist, screaming into it. Will you listen to that mouth on you, blowing trick candles you can't self-extinguish? To think you don't get to see your own innards, the number of breaths. Do they even have a value if uncounted? Time exists if you buy it. You crank it out like an awning and stand under it, or don't. Standing next to it is not an option, though. Just try to go around a river. I try to experience my entrails, can't sleep for containing them. Is this the same or opposite as being in the world without eyes for the infinite? Castaway. A racked strand of egg sac entrails, cochlear seashells, I hold to my ear what holds it here, an ebbing at the center. I have a white flag built into my skin, to give in to what I turn again, Noah's wife watching her friends float by, face down in God-forsaken flotsam, cups, nets, nips, syringes, what the heart holds, out. Remains. It's taking so long, this time, at the end of my eyes, to be discontinuous, at least to believe it. Once I climbed what's known as the first dune of the Sahara, despite how many there must be at the periphery, rose from nowhere. Time was a sophisticating form of darkness. It was then I built this fortress, the walls of which date back at me. The burial. Never to be outdone by woods where you heard the rain before feeling it. Now is the time to weave wreaths from waves' graven mats of marshweed. Please bear with me, this pall of pressed tin, skim milk sky. To this day I don't speak, but wake up 3 feet under with blindness of bright snow, don't want to go out in it. Things I miss about living in cities, dark shafts, cinder block backs of places, stringy saplings staked in squares of dirt and dog shit with cups in it. Now time is served in slow, pixelated shapes beholden only to their deliquescence, building behind the window, snow on sand, its dissonance. How could I hold a candle to what I would melt all over with? Salt box is the shape named for a tool we no longer use or would even recognize, but a whispering wall, bridge of sighs, architecture of what the head is too full not to hold. How pleasing all this work to be put there. Funny little A-frame, you funny little A-frame. The work is trying to end with my eyes, to die in time, to spare myself. Only sounds like you will survive this winter. Kleenex shreds in the dryer, contents of the kids' pockets banging through the morning, a bowl of banana stickers, your everyday near-death experience. Long for this world, I am out performing water, light, closing night, house to black, a hothouse overgrown with underbrush, the cost of thinking this much. Enunciation. See, at the beginning of the painting, she cradles her viscera, a small window hovering in front of her head. By the end, this tentative angel has taken from her the purpose of history to hold together more than one horizon. I can't give back the time I've taken up, but return my capacity to the air, alveoli to the vine, turn myself into eyes. I'm going to read Dream of the Trenches at the end has 20 essays of 150 words each, exactly. And I'm just going to read 5 of those. And the first is was a bit of an anticipatory tribute. The lesson. I miss that warbly fake pathos from the 80s, a la Rick Ocasek. We will never be the same. Our pathos is real, but turned inside out so as only to appear that way. When I was in 7th grade, I had a science teacher called Mrs. Harris. She collected roadkill and kept it in the classroom freezer for use during animal anatomy lessons. One time, she pulled out a fresh raccoon, stuck her hand in its ripped abdomen, flipped its skin inside out, and waggled its leg. The classroom duly exploded in screams and groans. I remember noticing how much she enjoyed her performance. One time, there was a weekend-long power outage, and all of Mrs. Harris's specimens defrosted. On Monday morning, the school reeked and the classroom was cordoned off, but I must have gotten in somehow because I know that this was the first time I saw maggots. Sacrifice. Once I took a proofreading test at a job interview and only missed a non-capped Velcro. I got the job, copy editing a consumer product catalog, but was never quite right with onesies and thermoses. It was my role to render them baby bodysuits and beverage containers, but I felt like a traitor to the lexicon. When a brand name slides into public usage, it's called genericide. Companies attempt to prevent it by suggesting other generic names, but who's ever called a trampoline a rebound tumbler? Failure rarely has a stable referent. A standard feature of Mesoamerican cities is a ball court, but anthropologists can only guess at the rules and object of the game. One theory says it may have been the game's winners who were sacrificed in order to fight evil in the underworld. But how seemingly senseless to knock off your best players, winnow your team into impotence. The itch. When I can't fall asleep at night, first I count backwards from 1,000, and then I try to figure out why I am awake, when the body most often possesses the means of its own mitigation. You rub spit on a mosquito bite, step on your stubbed toe, feel metaphoric, e.g., make the most of every moment. Your life is not a bag, and the capacity of time is always the same. We are so pleasingly self-contained, like one of those triangular single-slice pizza boxes you see at the airport. Of course, once it's emptied and thrown away, it looks like a head, homesick for its all but self-same contents. Did you read that story in the New Yorker about the woman whose unrelentingly itchy scalp caused her to scratch right through her cranium? The itch was imaginary, but what's the difference? She scratched all the way through to her brain. Thank you. The end. Entropy bothers me. Not the fact of it, but how it's characterized as increasing over time. It's the most counterintuitive thing I can think of. Shouldn't the concept of gradual heat death, the complete petering out of the universe, be a thing that's described as decreasing? There are probably physical reasons for this cognitive glitch, and while it's not the word's fault, but the directionality ascribed to its meaning, it would be nice if the word for entropy were somehow ass backwards too. What's worse, though, is how entropy increases into the redundant absolute zero, which denotes both utter temperature and the end of it. Wouldn't sort of zero be better? Language isn't arbitrary, but relative. The right words for the world might make sense of it. If I could be a theoretical poet and both break and make everything just by saying it, I'd be beholden only to controvertible qualities of poetry. All right, I'm going to finish with a few new poems from a new manuscript called Reverse Engineer. Headlong. In the middle of my life, I found myself a field, washed up on a beach, clover, bees, the whole 9 yards of boundlessness. I'm a literal person of skin that shows the shape of my bones, no marble virtue, arm broken from the shoulder. But out in the cold, fingered gloaming, what crawls down the side of its castle to sew my sucking wound wide open? Aftermath. There's only time between other things: birth, death, chest compressions. Negative space of spaces, face cast in matte black glass. Today I found my epitaph, redacted by last season's weeds, skewers through which I read, fallen leaves, ground beneath me. There's only one night, sun broken in on it, eyes asterisk dark, stars fall, ground up. I don't think I see too much. Automat. Please pardon our appearance, here piecing rivets, stitched apart into Perseus holding himself to the mirror. Holy mess of a tangram, where same figures contain each other and words, do they contain us as well? We'll just have to see. Poems are holy. A facade bends away from the face. I can see myself saying that what breaks from you remains. Antediluvian. I might be a slight woman, but rhetorical Methuselah, run-on face and pronounced mouth. In the teeth of all data, I am lashed to the mast, awake at the crack of ruin. Light heaves west, while I write from the middle. The ocean isn't finished. My head is a pincushion of holes with pins in it. I'll finish with how I look in the mirror. One day I will have lived between 2 points in time, but how many in space? That which describes what it displaces. Head, flag, beach bucket. This isn't right. What is displaced by described light? To survive means to be alive, despite what nearly took you or did the dead. My face full of arrowheads pointing at. Don't say, don't talk to me like that, like that. Thank you.
Kate's going. I think it might be fun for a minute or two of comments or questions. And I have one in mind just to get it started. But does it sound okay, Kate?
Mm-hmm. I've been doing this all day. Keep it up.
The roll's on.
Yeah.
Okay. The 150 words
Yes.
pieces are called slow structures.
Yes.
Why? What's slow about them?
That's actually a reference from Emerson's Snowbound poem. And Snowbound, that's what it's called, right? Snowbound? The Emerson. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and it, I think I have that right. But there's anyway. The James Whitcomb Riley poem is the other one. I get them confused. But it's a lot about snowfall and falling into forms. So there's the first essay in this series is about Emerson, and it actually kind of answers the question, but I didn't read it. But I was working with the constraint of 150 words, and I guess, I was letting snow fall around them and the form, taking its shape from the form that pre-existed.
Yeah, they're great.
Thank you.
Another comment, question? Ron? Oh, we even got a recording.
In the first work you read, in which everything has the same title, so that those of us who are trying to follow along can't possibly use the table of contents. There are lots of pieces with references to actual writers: Stein, Ben Lerner, Ashbery, other people. All of those were removed from the reading, and it was it was like seeing the Christmas tree without the ornaments.
Oh.
And I'm curious as to what the decision was around that.
Well, so the book has a big critical chunk to it, but because those threads are they're intermittent, it's hard to read. I thought maybe I should read all the Ben Lerner chunks, which are strewn through the whole book, or all the Stein chunks, or the Juliana Spar, David Buch chunks. But because they don't often stand alone very well, so given the 45-minute time constraint, I made the choice to sort of read around them. But other times I've read from the beginning, so it includes the beginnings of those threads. But I thought I'd try it differently this time. But I will remember, those are the ornaments.
Great. Kate, thank you.
Thank you all so much.
We have a reception, a yummy reception, and Kate will hang around, of course.